Today on the 5-Minute Book Review, we suplex Hitman by Bret the Hitman Hart. Quick fact, Bret Hart actually beat Ric Flair right here in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan in the old Sask place to win his very first World Championship in the WWF back in 1992. Back when the dastardly Papa Shango ran amok, back in those days when Papa Shango used to make those people's heads ooze that green stuff. Papa Shango shouldn't have been doing that. Anyways, Bret Hart was born and raised in Calgary, Alberta, and remains to this day a proud Canadian. It's been a difficult road for the Hitman. Coin toss to start, and Curtis wins. 5-Minute Book Review starring Ian and Curtis. Today we are taking a look at Hitman by Bret the Hitman Hart. The best there was, the best there is, and the best there ever will be, and that is fact. One of my two favorite wrestlers of all time. I grew up watching wrestling, grew up watching this man's career. It was great reading about it in book form. Wrestling autobiographies kind of became a fad in the late 90s when Mankind published his, which was a New York Times bestseller. This stacks above anything else for the wrestling genre of autobiographies, because this man right here, the whole time he was on tour, for the 20 years he was in the WWE and WCW, he kept notes, he kept journals. Then he went back and he used all those to make this book. It's harsh at times, he pulls no punches, and the only real flaw I can find in this book is that he's really critical of all the other wrestlers and not critical of himself at all. But the even more annoying part is, if you go back and look at his work in the ring, he's actually right. The man made very few mistakes, if any.
I mean, he is one of the best wrestlers of all time. He was the key star of the 1990s in, well, a couple of different promotions. He is the man. But when it comes to this book, I read it, kept getting the same thing over and over again, where he discusses how he's the man. And yes, he's great in the ring, but he continually points out other people's flaws. He continually blames other people for mistakes and describes, like, it's always, any good ideas are always his. And maybe they were, maybe they weren't. I wasn't there, I don't know. But once you're getting to the 400th page, that gets a little old. As far as this being the best wrestling biography of all time, I'm not saying that he's even come close to reading them all, because it is a fad at this point. But I gotta say, I like Chris Jericho's better. I think it's funnier and more enjoyable to read. At the same time, it skims the surface. Bret Hart it is kind of a hard read at times, because he does get pretty brutal on the industry and himself. Again, I don't know how much truth there is in it, but at the same time, I did enjoy reading it.
Yeah, Bret Hart doesn't really bring the humor. He takes himself extremely seriously. And like you mentioned, he's really hard on his fellow wrestlers. He talks about all the things they do on the road, the drugs and the alcohol, and he puts himself above them because he apparently never dabbled in that. But then he turns around and claims that he had a lot of relations with his fans, which is fair enough, but it's just kind of this two-tier thing where he looks down on everyone else for doing drugs and alcohol, and he does something that's, I don't know, arguably on par, but he wants, total forgiveness from that and says that's his way of dealing with it.
Everyone has their vices, and I think he's honest about it to an extent, but at the same time, who can say, right? I mean, it is a rough business. There's a lot going on behind the scenes. It's coming more and more into the light, especially since the death of Chris Benoit. I think that what it comes down to is the Hart family is one of the biggest legacies in the entire industry of wrestling. Them and the McMahons are the two biggest, probably. I say that this is an important book for the industry.
I got to meet Bret Hart on a couple of times, and unfortunately the whole Montreal thing went down in 1997, but I still claim 1997 was the best year in wrestling. He did this thing where he turned on the United States and was just pro-Canada, and even people that hate wrestling, I make them watch a couple Bret Hart interviews he did in Calgary and Edmonton, where he just was so pro-Canada, and people are like, hey, I hate wrestling, but that's really cool. When he talked about healthcare and how awesome Canada is, it was like if Wayne Gretzky all of a sudden just turned on the States, and then before every single hockey game talked about how awesome Canada was and how not cool the U.S. was. It really swelled you with pride, and you're getting that from pro wrestling. But yeah, the lowest point of the book, Ian, was when he's walking through the Holy Land, and he's talking about there's that one handprint that is apparently made by Jesus, and he put his hand in the handprint made by Jesus, and it was a perfect fit. No, Bret. No, I don't know. I don't even want to thought process what you're trying to say there. Just no.
Making the implication that he's the Jesus of wrestling probably isn't the way to go.
No, Ian, let's not even talk. It was bizarre. But still, fantastic book. Read it, definitely.
Read it.